Theology 120, Week 2, Ancient Worldviews. Before we begin with the worldviews for this week, let's begin with a summary and brief review of the three worldviews presented during Week 1. Pantheism, which offers no distinction between God and the universe, between the creator and creation. Deism, which states that there is no mystery, no revelation as a source of religious knowledge. And Gnosticism, which is a personal experience. Select few have a knowledge about salvation. Week 2 leads us into a discussion of Pelagianism, Materialism, and Secularism. Placuit Deo, a beautiful expression of the gospel. This is a letter written by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith to the bishops of the Catholic Church, and is meant for guidance. Specifically in paragraphs 1 and 2, it mentions modern challenges, the two modern challenges of the rapid rise of individualism and this understanding of an interior disposition to be reunited with God but not responsible. Each of these challenges contests the beauty and wonder of the Imago Dei. So to break down the letter, 1 and 2 paragraphs mention these modern challenges, and then in paragraph 5, the letter reiterates that quest for the origin story of who am I, and then the end, where am I going. Paragraphs 7 through 13 stresses the importance of salvation history. So for those of you in class who are less familiar with the Catholic understanding of the Imago Dei, let me simplify it this way. We are made in the image and likeness of God. Imago, image, Dei, God. And we are meant to cooperate with God in the building of the kingdom of God here and now. And you can cross-reference the Lord's Prayer, on earth as it is in heaven. We are responsible for the stewardship of the earth and the love of neighbor. And participating in the sacraments keeps us in right relationship with God, neighbor, and nature. It's Trinitine. As members of this unity with God, neighbor, and self, we are meant to care for others and our planet, and it's a universal call towards holiness. This letter stresses this salvation history and this cooperation in God's plan. Pelagianism is the first of the worldviews being explored this second week. Pelagianism originated in 5th century AD. Pelagius was a British monk who rejected the doctrine of original sin. For Pelagius and his followers, man was capable of living a sinless life without the assistance of God's grace. God's grace wasn't necessary for salvation. And original sin, it was perceived as an excuse for bad moral human behavior. Pelagianism rejects any arguments of anyone who claims they sin because of human frailty or weakness. Human nature is not tainted by original sin and still capable of choosing good or evil without any divine aid. For those of you needing a little bit further exploration of this particular teaching, I'm going to link to Brother Joseph Marie's presentation on the heresy of Pelagianism right up above and in the description box below. The Catechism of the Catholic Church readings present a good introduction into the two final worldviews for this second week, materialism and secularism. In paragraph 2125, the Catechism states that atheism, stemming from the root a, meaning no, and theos, meaning God, rejects or denies any existence of God. It's solely human autonomy. Agnosticism, meaning not, and gnosis meaning no, refrains from denying God or making a judgment about God's existence. It's an indifference. Materialism is a form of atheism. It's a refusal of any dependence on God. And this particular worldview claims that matter is the only reality in the world. A reality and all events result in conditions and activity of matter. Material things are to be understood by a single set of laws, the general laws of mechanics, and therefore any human action also is reduced to mechanical law. This worldview is also associated with the excessive desire for material goods and wealth. In his encyclical letter, The Pilgrimage on the Centenary, Pope Pius XII wrote a warning against materialism. In paragraph 46, he states, "Materialism is not confined to the condemned philosophy which dictates the policies and economy of a large segment of mankind. It rages also in a love of money, which creates ever greater havoc as modern enterprises expand, and which, unfortunately, determines many of the decisions which weigh heavy on the life of the people." A link to this encyclical letter will be in the description box below, as well as a link to the Psychology Today's article from March 2012 entitled "The Madness of Materialism." Secularism, derived from the Latin root saculorum, meaning of a generation or belonging to a particular age, can be conceived as a form of humanism. Anti-theistic and not necessarily anti-religious, moral judgments can be determined only with respect to specific and developing situations. There cannot exist, therefore, universal norms of conduct, nor do human values have absolute or permanent significance. Secularism emphasizes current human values to the exclusion on man's relationship to God. It rejects the end and purpose to human life, creating its own end as it progresses. Christifidelis Laici, Christ's faithful people. This post-synodal apostolic exhortation of St. John Paul II concludes our session for week 2. In paragraphs 3 through 6, the pressing needs of the world today, John Paul II notes that all men and women are called to holiness and action. Through faith and the sacraments of Christian initiation, human beings are made like Jesus Christ and incorporated as a living member in the Church and has an active part in the Church's mission of salvation. Paragraph 4 offers a response to secularism, the growing numbers of people abandoning religion and practice, and this understanding of religious indifference. John Paul II drives home his point in paragraph 5, and I quote, "When the individual is not recognized and loved in the person's dignity as the living image of God, the human being is exposed to more humiliating and degrading forms of manipulation that most assuredly reduce the individual to slavery to those who are stronger. Men and women, Christ's lay faithful, have an essential and irreplaceable presence in the world in the various sectors to which they work. They are the signs and love of Christ in the world for others." This week's assignment is your first podcast. Choose one of the topics from the financial crisis of 2008, U.S. lunch shaming practices, or technology as a double-edged sword. Identify which worldview from these past 2 sessions is predominant within your selected topic, and identify specific connections. You will be required to post both the audio and a written script with any work cited. A sample script outline will be posted in the course newsfeed for your guidance. You may choose to use that style if you're not familiar with how to write scripts. And in the words of Catherine Macaulay, let us take one day only in hands at a time, resolve to do good today and better tomorrow.